Batman is one of those characters that has been redesigned a lot over the years. Pirate Batman, Punisher Batman, overly muscular vampire Batman. But how about Sentai Batman? A full-on tokusatsu space western with energy swords, cosmic demons, and Bruce Wayne descending from an ancient order of galactic heroes that literally shouts, "Become the Knight," to transform. This is Immortal Legend Batman, and it kicks so much ass. But the wildest part is that DC Comics shut it down before the series could ever see the light of day. But true to its name, the comic refused to die, and it came back stronger and more powerful than anyone could have ever imagined. Hello and welcome to Comic Drake, where I talk about comic books and my name is Drake. Let's talk about it. But before we get too far into things, I want to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Whatnot. It's a live streaming shopping app that lets you buy, sell, and auction off pretty much anything. And I have actually been using it for a good while. I have personally used it to clear out my long boxes and to sell off comics that were taking up way too much space. But I've also gotten back into Magic the Gathering, and I have found great deals on cards to make my decks even better. Like, take a look at this Miles Morales card that I was able to snag for 20% less than the average price. But Whatnot is more than just auctions, because if you're looking for something in particular, then you can just buy directly from people's shops. There is just so much happening on Whatnot, with folks auctioning off anything from antiques to electronics to baby clothes, and of course the nerdy stuff like trading cards, comics, action figures, and whatnot. If you want to get started for yourself, then just click the link in the description or scan the QR code and you will get $15 off your first purchase. Once again, big thank you to Whatnot for sponsoring the video and helping me snag some great deals, but for now, let's get back to it. Dan Mora is one of the most talented artists in the modern era of comics, but when the world shut down during the pandemic of 2020, he, like a lot of us, found himself with a lot more free time than usual. So, just for fun, he started posting fan art of classic superheroes redesigned as tokusatsu heroes, including the Bat family. These outfits work so well because they're not overly complicated, and they could realistically translate into live-action suits. Now, it's no surprise that Dan Mora could adapt the Sentai style so well, considering that he has done extensive work on the various Power Rangers series for Boom Studios. But what is surprising is that the original writer of the main Mighty Morphin comic, Kyle Higgins, never had an opportunity to work with him, and he thought that this could finally be his chance to do so. Higgins and frequent collaborator Matt Groom approached Dan to ask if they could use those Sentai Bat family designs for a full pitch to DC Comics, to which he said yes, absolutely, resulting in one of the fastest greenlights in DC history. Because, I mean, come on, a tokusatsu Batman series written by one of the greatest Power Ranger comic writers of all time and illustrated by one of the greatest artists of all time, that is guaranteed to be a hit. But then DC went through a huge round of layoffs, and the editors that were making this project happen were gone. Obviously, this sucks, especially for all the staff that were out of work. But while Immortal Legend Batman was on ice, Kyle and Matt launched the Massiveverse, an indie comic phenomenon that wore its tokusatsu inspirations on its sleeve and became a massive success. Seriously, Radiant Black and Inferno Girl Red are some of the best comics that I have read in years. And clearly, DC agreed, because they came knocking to ask Kyle and Matt if they wanted to do something for the company in a similar fashion to it. They said, well, funny you should ask. We literally already made the exact pitch that y'all want, and you approved it like 5 years ago. So, needless to say, DC was ecstatic, and was more than happy to bring Immortal Legend Batman back into production, and now advertise it as coming from the geniuses behind the Massiveverse. By then, Dan Mora rightfully became one of the busiest artists in all of comics, so DC straight up forbid him from adding another monthly title to his workload. Instead, the artist of Inferno Girl Red, Erica D'Urso, was brought on board, and in fact, the entire Inferno Girl Red creative team was brought on over, like colorist Igor Monti and letterer Rebecca Carey, delivering a real treat for the eyes with vivid colors and explosive onomatopoeias. It's pure spectacle. And even though Dan Mora didn't have time to draw the main series, he wasn't about to sit this one out, insisting that he handle the covers and additional backup stories for each issue that explain the lore of this universe and showing us what's going on with the characters outside of Bruce.
At that point, it was clear we wouldn't be able to get Dan because Dan had quite rightly become the most important person in comics.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so we had to ask him if we could still do the series that he designed with someone else. And he, again, very graciously said yes, but said he wanted to do covers and backups. And I think it was at New York Comic Con last year, and we were like, Dan, they won't let you do that. You're too busy. And he insisted. He's like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm like, yes, sir. We're not going to argue with you.
So after years of waiting and reshuffling and crafting an entire indie empire in the meantime, Immortal Legend Batman finally hit shelves in 2025. And honestly, you can feel that all of that time in development didn't kill the idea, but rather it tempered it like steel. Because with the creative team spending all of those years in between building experience through Inferno Girl Red, they were able to make the second shot so much better than it would have been the first time around. Immortal Legend Batman is bold, it's stylish, and it wastes no time pulling you into an Elseworlds that feels unlike anything that DC has ever done before. Because let me tell you, we're not in Gotham anymore. This story takes place in a spacefaring future where humanity has learned how to harness dark matter, but in the process, they shattered the barrier between the universe and its dark shadow, allowing for soulless shadow creatures to escape from the rift. To combat the darkness, 3 warriors emerged, the Immortal Legends, that wield the strength and skill to stand against these demons and the forces of darkness, harnessing the energy of the universe itself to stop the spread of their evil and the swell of their numbers. The first embraced the light, calling their techniques the Way of the Robin. The next used the dark as the Way of the Bat, and the third used both as the Way of the Nightwing. Now, Kyle Higgins is a massive Nightwing fan, so there is a great little detail for how his powers work in particular. You see, when he's using light energy, Nightwing activates Flamebird mode, which is a nod to the Kryptonian heroes of Nightwing and Flamebird who inspired Dick's name in the main continuity after being told their story by Superman. It's also unintentionally a reference to Nightwing's infamous New 52 costume, which was written by Kyle Higgins.
I've seen a few people say online, like, oh, Kyle brought Red Nightwing back. It's like, no, actually, that was not his choice.
I've talked about this publicly before, so I don't feel like I'm saying too much, or I'm too out of school at the moment, but I was almost fired off of Nightwing multiple times over arguing to try to get the blue suit back, like over the span of like years. Like I disliked the red so much.
Contrary to their names though, the Immortal Legends are not immortal, but they persist throughout the years as each of the Immortal Legends trains a successor to take up their mantle. In this most recent era, Stephanie Brown chose boy genius Tim Drake as the new Robin, Harper Row chose stunt pilot Dick Grayson as the new Nightwing, and Roger Elliott chose trillionaire Bruce Wayne to be the new Batman. But of course, it's not a Batman story without dead parents, so how did it happen this time? Bruce lost both of his parents in a shadow attack, which inspired him to devote his life to fight back the darkness and ensure that no other children would have to experience this pain. And luckily, Bruce actually knew Roger Elliott as he was a close family friend. Elliot refused to train Bruce because he was convinced that Wayne's posh lifestyle would make him too weak to carry on the mantle of Immortal Legend Batman. But determined to prove him wrong, Bruce spent years traveling the galaxy to train his body and mind, and did just that, with Elliot begrudgingly admitting that the kid was a worthy successor, and he took him under his bat wing, even though part of his tutelage was having Bruce committed and having his underlings beat the shit out of him. But just like the main continuity, Bruce Wayne is a man that strives for constant improvement, and in his quest to become the perfect hero, he performed a forbidden technique that was so dangerous that it actually killed the last Batman that attempted it. This technique harnesses dark energy to purge the weaknesses of one's body, splitting their soul in the process. But Bruce's flaws didn't just disappear. They instead took physical form as independent shadow clones that spread across the galaxy to unleash destruction, all while wearing the face of Bruce Wayne. Bruce saw these monsters unleashed as his responsibility, and so he abandoned the other Immortal Legends to hunt them down, traveling from world to world in his Star Strider. And even with the help of his robot butler, Alfred, Bruce's journey as a lone warrior haunted by the consequences of his desire for perfection requires him to take different approaches for each villain. Sometimes he can roll into town and let his reputation as an Immortal Legend precede him, or sometimes he needs to take a stealthier approach, like whenever he infiltrated a gang of space pirates under the guise of a wanderer named Malone. I love that. And he encourages the gang to reform and not give Batman a reason to come back and take them all out. What I really love though is that each of these shadows represent a different aspect of his psyche, like wrath, guilt, obsession, etc. And they have monster forms that are based on classic Batman villains like the Two-Faced Man, the Bane of Humanity, and the Man of Riddles. Hey, so editing Drake here. I realized that I got the name wrong. It's not the Bane of Humanity, but instead the Bane of Man. But interestingly, that mistake made me realize that every single one of of these shadow clones has the word man in their name. So I'm pretty sure that might be intentional, and that is an interesting thing that might come into play later on in the series. It is a brilliant take on the Rogues Gallery, where Bruce is literally facing his demons.
Sometimes there's tragedy there, doesn't always have to be, but the Batman villains are all built on something like that, or the best reinterpretations of the villains, like Mr. Freeze, are built on that same type of engine. And I think that tragic core that also speaks to not only the concept of the villain, but the themes that the villain is going to be kind of dancing around, or you're going to be exploring with. That marriage between them all is what makes a villain kind of pop and stand the test of time. It's the same for a hero in a lot of ways.
Now, some of you guys might be frustrated that I'm not going into extreme details about the plot, and that's because at the time of this recording, only the first 3 issues have been released. But on top of that, even though every single comic is better experience when you actually pick up the book and read it yourself instead of just listening to a YouTube video, thank you for watching, I really appreciate it. Immortal Legend Batman especially is a series that you need to be reading because it's super episodic like the TV shows that inspired it. Each issue has Batman landing on a totally new planet, learn what's going on with that world's Bruce Wayne doppelganger, and then Batman fights the monster of the week, or month in this case. But with all that being said, there are some overarching plot elements in the backup stories, like Roger Elliott's son Tommy being sent off to track down Bruce to punish him for performing the forbidden soul-splitting technique. Tommy is pissed that his father gave the title of Immortal Legend Batman to Bruce, and he is determined to claim what he thinks is his birthright. But where that storyline is going is being kept pretty hush-hush. This is pure speculation on my part, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Green Ranger situation going on, where Tommy steals some of Bruce's powers and becomes like a shadow Batman or something. On the surface, this comic might seem like it's all style and no substance, with bombastic fights where folks call out the names of their special attacks, but I still think this book delivers on some solid character moments and interesting details, like genuinely difficult puzzles that are left by the Riddler that you as the reader can solve if you decide to take a moment to put the book down and analyze the scenes as if you were Batman himself. These kinds of advanced puzzles are really not my thing, so I gave up immediately. But if you love them, then keep an eye out for issue number 3 and try to solve them before Batman explains the solutions at the very end. I know for a fact that Kyle Higgins worked for a very high profile ARG, and you can tell that he put those skills to work here. If you want to try and solve the first puzzle, then I'm gonna leave it here on screen, so feel free to pause it and take your best shot. And if you like it, hey, show the creators some love and then go pick up the book. I'm sure they would appreciate it. Now, like I said, there have only been 3 issues released so far, but boy howdy is this comic going places.
What we can say is that we know that there is a lot of stuff that is very iconic to Batman, that we have very intentionally from jump cast ourselves away from in an attempt to prove to people why this book is different and just set expectations for how broad we're going and how much we're interpreting. But we know that there is arguably 2 big characters missing from the book. And I think one of those is Gotham. And I think in the same way that perhaps Gotham is looming for readers as an expectation, Gotham is looming over Bruce as a character as he moves through this story. And kind of like the Death Star, it's just going to sort of slowly move into orbit and then blow everything up when it arrives. So I think that'd be very fun.
The take on Gotham is definitely big, literally and metaphorically. If you've read any of the issues thus far, anytime we've referenced Gotham, you may notice that the reference is not characters saying something in Gotham. They're saying on Gotham.
Yep.
Gotham is a world unto itself, and it's a very specific kind of world. I'll say that. Once you start to see the visuals from it, I think you'll understand what I mean. And the other character that I think Matt is alluding to, we're not going to talk about today, but they go hand in hand with Gotham, and I think that this interpretation is definitely one of the scariest that I've I've been a part of, for sure.
If anything I have said in this video sounds interesting to you, then go read Immortal Legend Batman right now. And if you want to learn more about the behind the scenes of how it got made in the first place, then my full interview with Matt and Kyle is linked in the description and hosted over on my interview channel. Or hey, maybe you want to know more about what the Massiverse is. In that case, you can check out my dedicated award-winning video. No matter what, I've got you covered on how to keep you entertained next. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.